Introduction. Let me ask you something. You think you know the 1969 Charger RT inside and out. You've watched every General Lee episode, read the magazine articles, maybe even owned one yourself. But here's what keeps me up at night. After decades of researching these cars, talking to original owners and digging through factory documentation, I keep finding secrets that even the most dedicated Mopar guys have missed. Picture this, it's 1969. Neil Armstrong is about to take that first step on the moon, and nearly 500,000 American soldiers are deployed in Vietnam. Woodstock is just months away. And here in Detroit, Dodge is building what many consider the perfect muscle car, the second-generation Charger RT. But what you don't know about this car could fill a book. The 1969 model year was the Charger's finest hour. Over 89,000 units rolled off the assembly line, making it the best-selling year in Charger history. But buried in those production numbers, hidden in the order sheets and lost in the decades since, are details that separate the guys who think they know from the guys who actually do. This isn't your typical listicle about horsepower and 0 to 60 times. Those numbers? You already know them. We're going deeper into the engineering decisions that Chrysler tried to hide, the options packages that almost nobody ordered, and the mathematical quirks that make certain combinations nearly impossible to find today. So buckle up. Whether you wrenched on these cars when they were new or you've been chasing one for decades, I guarantee at least 3 of these facts are going to surprise you. And if you stick around to the end, I'll tell you about the one RT option combination that's rarer than a HEMI Daytona and worth considerably less. Secret 1. The disappearing HEMI RTs, a numbers game. Nobody expected production records indicate fewer than 19,000 RT models were built in 1969, with only 432 equipped with the legendary 426 HEMI. Think about that. Out of nearly 90,000 Chargers built that year, less than half of 1% left the factory with the elephant under the hood. But here's where it gets interesting. That $648.20 HEMI option, that wasn't the barrier. It was everything else that came with it. See, when you checked the HEMI box, you were also committing to heavy-duty everything. Beefier suspension, mandatory performance axle, uprated cooling. Your insurance company took one look at that and smiled like a shark. Premium rates didn't just double, they tripled, sometimes quadrupled for young buyers. And here's something the magazines never told you. The vast majority of RTs were powered by the 440 Magnum, about 18,344 of them. The 440 delivered 375 horses at 4,600 RPM and 480 pound-feet of torque at 3,200. That's 95% of the HEMI's punch for less than half the headaches. Smart buyers knew this. The HEMI was glorious, but the 440 Magnum was the engine that actually won street races because it was out there being driven instead of sitting in a garage waiting for its temperamental carburetors to be synchronized. Secret 2, the RT that cost less than a loaded Impala. The mythology around muscle cars has convinced people these things cost a fortune when new. Let me set the record straight. The RT trim began at a base price of $3,575. For context, a fully loaded Chevrolet Impala could easily top $4,000 in '69. A base Corvette, $4,781. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. That base model Charger started at $3,109 with a 225 cubic inch slant 6. So the RT premium was only $466 over a base Charger. What did that get you? The legendary 440 Magnum as standard, heavy-duty suspension, dual exhaust, upgraded brakes, and those beautiful RT emblems. It wasn't a luxury package, it was a performance bargain. Now here's where Dodge got sneaky. They'd advertised that $3,575 base price, but by the time you added air conditioning at $357, power steering at $106.80, and maybe the Super Track pack at $256, you were north of $4,500 real quick. And dealers? They knew exactly how to work those options sheets. Nobody drove home in a stripped RT, nobody. Secret 3. The Motor Trend test that embarrassed the competition. Motor Trend magazine tested a 1969 Charger RT with the 444 barrel automatic transmission and 3.55 rear gearing in their January 1969 issue. The result? 13.90 seconds at 101.4 miles per hour in the quarter mile. Now, to the uninitiated, that might not sound earth-shattering, but here's the context that matters: that automatic-equipped, relatively mild-geared RT ran within 2/10 of a HEMI Roadrunner that cost $1,000 more. It embarrassed the GTO, made the 396 Chevelle look like it was towing a boat. And it did this with the kind of reliability that meant you could drive it to work Monday morning after smoking someone at the Strip Saturday night. The 440 wasn't trying to win dyno shootouts. It was engineered for what Chrysler called practical street performance, which meant tremendous low-end torque, bulletproof internals, and the ability to run pump gas without pinging itself to death. Those magazine testers noted something else. The RT was civilized. It didn't buck and snort like the HEMI cars. You could actually daily drive it. And in '69, that distinction mattered more than most people remember. Secret 4, the weight distribution secret that made it handle. Here's something you won't find in the brochures. The 1969 Charger RT had a shipping weight of 3,646 pounds, but fully optioned cars on the street regularly tipped the scales around 4,000 pounds. That's heavy, right? But Chrysler's engineers did something clever. That big block 440 sat almost entirely behind the front axle centerline. The result? Weight distribution that approached 55-45 front to rear, remarkable for a nose-heavy muscle car. Compare that to the HEMI cars, where the massive iron block pushed the numbers closer to 60-40, and you start to understand why the 440 RTs felt more nimble on back roads. The suspension told the same story. Heavy-duty torsion bars up front, multi-leaf springs out back, and anti-roll bars that were actually engineered rather than thrown on as an afterthought. The RT wasn't trying to be a road racer, but it could hold its own on a winding two-lane in ways that shocked drivers coming from GM or Ford products. The Charger's reputation as just a straight-line bruiser, that came from people who never actually drove one hard through the curves. Secret 5, the SuperTrack pack that almost nobody ordered. The A34 SuperTrack pack cost around $256 and appeared on about 451 of the 440 Chargers and about 94 of the HEMI-equipped models. Out of nearly 19,000 RTs, we're talking about 545 cars. That's 2.8%. Rarer than most people realize. What did the SuperTrack pack include? A Dana 60 rear differential with 4.10 gears, power front disc brakes, engine and transmission coolers, and engine-specific suspension tuning. Those 410 gears transformed the car's character completely. Instead of the lazy highway cruiser the 323 or 355 gears delivered, you got a car that exploded off the line like it was personally offended by the concept of traction. But here's the trade-off nobody mentions. With those gears, the engine was screaming at 3,800 RPM at 70 miles per hour. Long highway trips became an exercise in endurance. Your fuel economy, already dismal, got worse. The A34 wasn't for everybody. It was for the guy who cared more about Saturday nights than Sunday drives. Secret 6, the Bumblebee stripe, delete that made cars more valuable. Every RT left the factory with the famous Bumblebee stripe on the tail, except when it didn't. The V88 stripe delete option replaced the stripe with RT emblems on the quarter panels. Dodge didn't advertise this much, and most buyers probably never knew it existed. But a small percentage of original purchasers specifically requested the delete. Why? Some thought the stripe looked too flashy, too teenage. They wanted the performance without the attention. corporate executives, older buyers, guys who needed to fly under the radar, they ordered V88. Today, these cars spark endless debates at shows. Is it original? Did someone remove it? Without documentation, you'd never know. Here's the irony. Those striped elite cars, once considered less desirable, are now worth more in certain circles specifically because they're rarer and represent a more mature take on the muscle car formula. The market has come full circle. The understated RT that would have sat on the dealer lot longer in '69 is the one collectors fight over now. Secret 7. The SE package that created Jekyll and Hyde. The special edition package added leather bucket seats, wood-grain steering wheel and dashboard inserts, hood-mounted turn signals, deep dish wheel covers, and SE badges on the C-pillars. But here's what makes it fascinating. You could get the SE package on any Charger, including the RT. The RT SE created a split-personality car, luxury cruiser that could run 13s in the quarter. Fewer than 4,500 Chargers were estimated to have received both packages, and a significant portion of those were base or 383-powered cars. The 440 RT SE was uncommon. The HEMI RT SE was practically non-existent. Think about what this represented. You're sitting in genuine leather, your hand on a wood-rimmed steering wheel, looking at wood grain accents on the dash. But underneath, there's a 440 cubic inch V8 with enough torque to shred the rear tires on command. It was the gentleman's muscle car, and Dodge marketed it to buyers who wanted both sophistication and speed, though not many checked both boxes. Secret 8. The hidden headlight system that actually worked. Let me tell you about one of the most underappreciated engineering achievements on this car, those rotating headlights. Every other manufacturer who tried hideaway headlights in this era created maintenance nightmares. Vacuum-operated systems that leaked, motors that failed, mechanisms that jammed in cold weather. The Charger's system used individual motors for each headlight bucket, controlled by limit switches and relays, and, when properly maintained, they were remarkably reliable. The secret was simplicity. Each bucket had its own motor, its own switches, and its own circuit. If one failed, the other still worked. You weren't left dark. The relay system was robust, and the motors, while slow by modern standards, were nearly indestructible. I've seen original motors working perfectly on 55-year-old cars. But here's the catch. Very few people understood how to maintain them. The limit switches needed occasional adjustment. The motors benefited from periodic lubrication. Neglect these, and yes, you'd have problems. But blame the owners, not the engineering. Chrysler built a hideaway system that actually worked. They just didn't account for decades of deferred maintenance. Secret 9. The historical context nobody remembers. It's July 20th, 1969. Nearly 600 million people watched as Neil Armstrong took those first steps on the moon. Meanwhile, nearly 500,000 Americans were deployed in Vietnam, with 537 killed in July alone. America was simultaneously reaching for the stars and tearing itself apart. Your new Charger RT was rolling off the assembly line into this chaos. Cities had endured summers of violence, the counterculture was in full swing, and opposition to the Vietnam War was large and growing. Muscle cars represented something different to everyone. To some, American technological prowess. To others, wasteful excess while soldiers died overseas. The Charger existed in this contradiction. It was engineered with the same aerospace precision that put men on the moon, wind tunnel testing, computer-analyzed structures, advanced metallurgy. But it was also a product of an industry that seemed oblivious to the cultural upheaval around it. Those who bought RTs in '69 weren't just buying transportation, they were making a statement about which version of America they believed in. Secret 10. The split grille design that almost didn't happen. The '69 Charger's defining visual feature, that split grille, was a last-minute styling change. The 68 model had a smooth, round opening. For 69, Dodge Design wanted minimal changes to save money, but the marketing department pushed for differentiation. The split grille was the compromise, dramatic enough to distinguish the model year, but cheap enough to implement using mostly existing tooling. What nobody anticipated was how iconic it would become. That divided opening, those vertical bars, the way it framed the rotating headlights, it created one of the most recognizable faces in automotive history. And it was almost an afterthought. The horizontal taillights were similarly motivated by cost savings rather than design philosophy. But together, these budget changes created a look that defined the era. Sometimes the best design happens not in spite of constraints, but because of them. Secret 11. The torque flight advantage nobody talks about. Let's address the elephant in the room, the automatic transmission. In 69, if you wanted to be taken seriously in muscle car circles, you bought a 4-speed manual. Automatics were for your dad, for luxury cars, for people who didn't really understand performance. Except here's what the stoplight warriors figured out real fast. Chrysler's Torque Flight 3-speed automatic was actually quicker in the quarter mile than most drivers could manage with the A833 4-speed. Why? Consistent, precise shifts executed at optimal RPMs, zero chance of blowing a shift, and a torque converter that could multiply engine output during launch. The 4-speed was more engaging, gave you more control, and satisfied the purest impulse. But if you actually wanted to win races, the automatic was the secret weapon. Period road tests proved it consistently. The guys who mocked automatic muscle cars in 69 often found themselves watching torquey flight-equipped RTs pull away from the line. Secret 12. The production number myth that persists. Dodge produced 503 Charger Daytonas in 1969 for NASCAR homologation, 3 more than the 500 required. Everyone knows this number, but here's what they get wrong. Regular RT production was fewer than 19,000 units, not the 25 or 30,000 you'll see quoted in auction descriptions and internet forums. The confusion comes from combining all Charger models, base 500 RT, into one number. Total Charger production for 69 was about 104,978 units. The RT specifically? Much rarer than people think. When someone tells you they have a 1 of 30,000 RT, they're wrong by about 37%. This matters for valuation, for rarity claims, for understanding the actual historical record. The 69 Charger was successful, but the RT was a relatively small part of that success. Most buyers went for lesser engines and saved the money. The RT buyer was making a specific choice about performance over economy, and not as many made that choice as mythology suggests. Secret 13, the value paradox that defies logic. Current Hagerty data shows 69 Charger values ranging from $26,000 to $769,000 depending on model, condition, and provenance. But here's the paradox that drives collectors crazy. A pristine, numbers-matching 440 RT in concours condition might bring $120,000. A HEMI RT, double that minimum. But an RT SE with the 440, original leather, documented history, and low miles, it could go either way. Either it brings a premium for rarity and originality, or it sits unsold because buyers don't understand what they're looking at. The market hasn't decided what the SE premium should be. Some collectors see it as diluting the performance image. Others recognize it as a fascinating period option that represents a different philosophy about muscle cars. The cars caught between these viewpoints, the ones that aren't pure performance machines, but aren't luxobarge either. They're the ones creating the most interesting discussions and the most volatile auction results. And here's your final surprise. That rare option combination I mentioned earlier, it's not the HEMI, it's not the Super Track Pack, it's the base Slant 6 Charger. Dodge sold about 500 with the 145 horsepower, 225 cubic inch, 6-cylinder. These were fleet specials, insurance dodges, or budget purchases. They're rarer than HEMI RTs and worth a tiny fraction of the value. Rarity doesn't always equal desirability. Sometimes rare just means nobody wanted it then and nobody wants it now. So there you have it. 13 secrets about the 1969 Charger RT that even the hardcore Mopar guys might have missed. We covered production realities, engineering decisions, market positioning, and historical context that the original marketing materials glossed over. Here's what I want you to take away. These cars were never just about straight-line speed or quarter-mile times. They were products of a specific moment in American history, engineered with genuine sophistication, marketed with calculated precision, and purchased by people making complex decisions about performance versus practicality. If you owned one in '69, I want to hear about it in the comments. What options did you order? What do you wish you'd known then that you know now? And if you're chasing one today, what's your target spec? Are you after the HEMI everybody wants, or the 440 that was actually the better street car? Hit that subscribe button if you want more deep dives into muscle car history that go beyond the surface level specifications. And if you learned something new today, even if you've been around these cars your whole life, leave a comment and tell me which secret surprised you most. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, the best muscle cars aren't always the ones with the biggest engines or the highest auction results. Sometimes they're the ones that made the most sense at the time and still do today. Now go find yourself a 440 RT before the market figures out what they're really worth.